Good afternoon, world, and welcome to another vlog with... Today we want to talk about our massive trip, our vacation, 6-week journey from Siargao Island in Mindanao up to Manila and back. How much we spent.
Yeah, we drove.
Yes.
We drove all the way from Siargao Island to Metro Manila and back again. Because of this thing here.
Yes.
We wanted to bring Poppy with us.
Whenever we do a trip like this, we always write down how much we're spending on accommodation, gasoline, transport costs like flights or boats, and we wanted to share with you guys how much it costs because we thought it might be interesting for people who are planning a vacation or just generally want to know what the state of affordability is like here in the Philippines when you're coming here for your own adventures. But before we begin, speaking of money, there is actually somebody who has been plaguing the comments of our videos lately, a scammer who has been pretending to be us. It's got our channel name, our channel picture, and they've basically been trying to get people to follow them onto Telegram or another site, give over private information of theirs. So likely they're trying to steal something from you. So
yes, if you have seen this, just be aware that it is not us. And don't fall prey to them. It's not us, and if we ever did put anything up like that, you would know about it. So just be mindful when you're on the internet that these things can happen. And
it leads us into a way that you can protect yourselves from this with one of our video sponsors that we've talked about before, Surfshark VPN. So usually when we mention our sponsor, we normally talk about how we can watch content in different parts of the world, but actually Surfshark VPN is primarily for your safety and security online, to protect your credit card details from being stolen, your ID like your social security number, or even your email address from being leaked and used against you online.
How it works is you can upload your details onto the VPN service, and then they can do a search for you to let you know whether or not any of your information has been used without your consent.
Yes. So normally when you're purchasing stuff online and you're using a credit card or a debit card, or your email address is being put into different websites, it will be able to tell you if your information has been used somewhere that you didn't know about, and it gives you a warning, and therefore if you know that you didn't make that purchase, it's likely fraudulent.
We have been using the Surfshark VPN the entire time that we've lived in the Philippines. Well over 3 years now we have been using this service, so we can recommend it to you guys.
As always, if you check the link down below, you will see that there is a discount offer. Just use the discount code 8miles and you get 85% off and 3 months free, and if you don't like it, you can always cancel the subscription, so you get your full money back and it's basically no risk. Alright, back to the cost of our trip. So on my phone right here, I have actually written down everything that we've spent, but I haven't calculated it all in one go to find out what the total price was. I've just kind of calculated individual things like the price of accommodation. So let's start with the boats. So when we left the island of Siargao, the very first point of call is to Surigao City, so it's 4.5 hour car boat trip, and that total price was 5,500 pesos. Straight away, not an hour after that, we took another boat straight over to the island of Leyte, and that was also 5,500 pesos, so a total of 11,000 pesos within the first day, and we hadn't even stayed in any accommodation yet. 11,000 pesos is the equivalent of 162 British pounds, and that was just on slow boat transport over 2 islands. So it's already racking up. By the time we finished that journey, we were already ready to go to sleep. So we booked an Airbnb at the last moment and we ended up staying by the beach, and that accommodation cost us 3,580 pesos for 2 nights. That works out to another 53 pounds. So again, within 24 hours of leaving this island, we'd spent over 200 pounds British money.
Yeah.
So
and we hadn't even really done anything.
No, nothing fun had been done at this point.
We didn't feel like the journey had really even begun in a way, because it was just that kind of mission, that big chunk to be able to get off of this island and onto the next island, and yeah, you're not really doing anything either. That is literally just travel and sleeping.
It was nice to wake up the next day on the island of Leyte and see the beach. We've never been to that island before, so that's when things got exciting for us. we got to see a different part of the Philippines, and the exciting journey for us had begun. We were doing this trip so that we could go to Manila for Christmas, so we needed to get some gasoline. That was the next thing. We filled up the car, and that cost us 3,000 pesos. So 3,000 pesos is about 44 British pounds, and that saw us quite a way into the journey actually. So we headed off from there, and we went halfway up the island of Leyte and stayed in a nice big house, which we found on the website booking.com in the city of Tacloban. And we only stayed there for one night, and that cost us 3,500 pesos. But for the size of the house, I would say it was pretty good value for money. It could have slept about 10 people. So some of the places we were booking, we could have saved money had we been traveling in a larger group. It's worth noting at this point that as we're traveling with a dog, we needed to find pet-friendly accommodation, and that often means either renting a bigger house or finding a place with extra fees or something like that. The next mission after that was to get out of Leyte and basically get to the very top of Samar so we could continue our journey to Manila. And we were just driving all day, so we needed more gasoline. That was another almost 3,000 pesos, so another 45 pounds. And we stayed in a very basic beachside accommodation that night, which we arrived to very late, so we didn't get to enjoy very much.
Yeah,
And
it was a bit of a hassle, this place, to be honest, because where we had to leave the car, the accommodation didn't have access, so you had to park out on a very narrow, tight street and walk down an unpaved, muddy road to the room. But I think it hadn't really been used. I don't think many people had been booking it, so when we turned up there wasn't even bed sheets or anything.
No.
And Jay had to pick a lock on a cupboard to reveal the towels and the bed sheets, like they hadn't been put out for us. And we kind of just felt like we were sleeping in a kind of like locked up hotel that we shouldn't have really been in. And had it been a nice sunny day and everything was on and working and things like that, it probably would have been quite a nice place to stay.
yeah, especially for the price as well. It only cost 1,970 pesos to stay there.
Yeah.
So for a beachside private room with a bathroom which was private, it wasn't a great bathroom, like the water wasn't running either, was it?
No.
So that's another reason why we think perhaps the resort hadn't been stayed in for a while. But
Yeah.
maybe in its heyday or in the higher seasons, it would have been quite good value for money and a nice place to stop if you are in that part of Samar. And I do believe that the only reason really to be up there is to catch the boat the next day to head over to Luzon, which is the Philippines' biggest island and where Metro Manila is located.
If we hadn't have stayed there, then we would have literally been sleeping in the car at the port, because there's nowhere else to go.
No.
You're like at the end of the island, you can't cross because the boats aren't running, so we had to stop, we had to sleep. And again, like Jay said, because we have Poppy, our dog, we needed a dog-friendly accommodation, and they are kind of few and far between.
Yeah.
And also because of the season that we were travelling in during Christmas, a lot of the accommodations get booked up.
The very next morning we jumped on the boat to Luzon, and that cost us a lot less than the other boat. It was only 2,000 pesos to get across the island port to Matnog and to continue our journey up to Manila. 2,000 pesos again is about £30. So that was a reasonable cost, but it was only a very short crossing, only 1 hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then that day was all about driving. We managed to stop in a place called Naga City, and we found one of the best accommodations for long road tripping people. It was amazing, in a subdivision which apparently is quite well known, called a Camella subdivision. And we just checked straight into this house, which was on Airbnb. You just typed in the codes to get in. They had a washer dryer, they had amazing air conditioning, everything was clean and tiled. They had a kitchen there with everything you could possibly need as a travelling family. Even off-street parking, so we could get our car off the road and
that
just
was good.
reset.
And also on the grounds there was access to a swimming pool and a basketball court, and also walking distance, maybe 15-minute walk to a mall, which was quite brand new as well. I think the mall had only been there for a few months as well. So it was a really nice area, and after all the long journey that we'd had so far, it was a nice welcome break to stop there and just kind of feel a bit normal again.
Price wise as well, very affordable. It was only for 2 nights 3,950 pesos, which works out to about 30 British pounds a night for a whole house, We each had air conditioners in our bedrooms, and to have access to all those things and completely reset was a very welcome stop. I would say though that an area like, let's say, Nugget City isn't particularly well known, so maybe that's why the costs were lower, because we did notice that our accommodation costs started going up significantly the closer we got to Metro Manila. So the next day we whacked 3,000 pesos into the car again, which again is about £45, and headed up to Makati, which is a fairly well-known high-end area of Metro Manila. And we stayed there for 2 nights, and that cost us 13,500 pesos just for 2 nights. So looking at the cost of a lot of the other accommodations we've been in, to stay 2 nights here in the city, we could have spent a whole week in other parts of the Philippines.
Yeah.
And that was just for when we first arrived there.
Yeah, so when we actually sat down to work out this and to kind of go over the trip that we done, we kind of made a few mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're telling you this, we're telling you all these costs and everything, in the hope that maybe you'll take some in and learn from our mistakes and what we could have done better.
Yeah.
And you can explain
I'll
that.
explain that next year, because the next Metro Manila accommodation we stayed in was for 6 nights in the Gramercy, and that was 27,000 pesos. And then we also had to pay for parking. So everywhere in the city we were staying in, we pretty much had to pay extra to put our car underneath it. And you can't exactly park a car full of stuff, which has got all of your belongings in it, 5 kilometers away, and then walk it down to the house. And all of that added up. And then when we left the city and we were staying near to your dad even, that house cost us 17,500 pesos as well. So,
and that was for a week.
Yeah, so when we added up all of our Manila costs, all of our accommodation costs for the time we spent there, all the parking fees, all the small blocks of time, if we had have booked 1 whole month in one of these fancy apartments in Makati, it would have cost us maybe 50,000 pesos, which is maybe 20,000 less than what we spent, and that's for the whole month. That would have covered our parking cost, it would have covered the time we were away from the city, because we actually left to go to South Korea for a week. We could have left the car at the apartment that we booked for the whole month.
We could have left stuff in the apartment as if it was our own little house for a month, and in fact we had to kind of repack everything, and we left some stuff at my dad's house because we were homeless essentially, so we didn't have anywhere to leave anything, so we had to palm off some stuff with my dad while we went away. And Poppy went into a pet hotel. I don't know if you've included that.
No, I
in
didn't
the
include
price.
that price, no.
So obviously if you're travelling with a dog, which we realise is rare,
unusual,
I'm not sure how many people would be doing this, but maybe you're not doing it because you don't think it can be done. So that's another reason why we're saying this, is that it can be done. You can travel Manila by car, but it's just confusing. There's lots to kind of work out.
Go onto a website or an app like Airbnb and try looking at the monthly rentals, because often they will drop their prices by 30 or 35%, and looking at 5 nights here, 2 nights there, whatever. And the parking cost, if you can find somewhere with included free parking for a whole month for between 40 to 50,000 pesos, you will save so much money.
Yeah, and also obviously when you're booking new accommodations all the time, like after a week or a couple of nights, you're then paying a booking fee again, parking fee again, or you're paying a cleaning fee again, or a pet fee again. Whereas if you just stayed in one place, there would only be one fee.
A little tip from us, and tip to ourselves in the future, we would have pre-booked 1 month stay with parking, then just literally left all of our stuff there. It would reduce the stress of travel and actually reduce the cost down as well. Also, if you don't use a website like Airbnb, you can get it much cheaper, but you may have to stay longer. We know people that are renting for, let's say, 2 to 3 months around the same areas, and they're getting accommodations between 25 and 30k. But normally when you do a longer term rental like that, you have to pay your electricity bill on top, which is normally about 2,500 pesos per month. It cost us 73,500 pesos in Metro Manila apartment fees and parking fees. And we could have done it on Airbnb, which is the expensive end of things, for 50,000. So we kind of wasted 20k, which is about £400. So we mentioned one of the main reasons for us going up to Manila was to spend Christmas with the family, and we booked ourselves into the Sofitel hotel for 4 nights over Christmas. And we weren't sure whether to mention this or not, because it's a pretty expensive thing to do and we were treating ourselves, but we did feel like if there is anybody coming to the Manila Bay area, and they were looking into like perhaps a hotel chain that they know, because Sofitel is a European place, how much it cost us. So we worked out that for the 4 nights we were staying, just 4 nights we were staying in the Sofitel, it was well over 100,000 pesos to stay in that suite, which is more than all the accommodation costs that we spent going across the Philippines. So there you go for comparison. You can go from one end to the other with regards to how much you're spending on where you stay, but you're paying for a certain level of service and it's holiday budget.
The reason that we wanted to stay there, we had actually decided that we were going to do something really nice for Christmas. Because of our previous Christmas, we were obviously hit by the typhoon Odette, the super typhoon that kind of destroyed the island that we live on, and our Christmas was completely wiped out, and we just wanted to kind of erase that a little bit and do something nice and treat ourselves. And we kind of decided that about a year ago, and we put the plans in motion when my dad visited us in June or July, and he was going to come with us. So it was like a family event, the first Christmas that I'd spent with my dad in like almost 20 years. So it was a whole thing, and that's why we wanted to kind of splurge a little bit on that. And we had been saving for like almost a year for these 4 days to happen. We knew it was going to be expensive, but at the same time we wanted just to have a little bit of luxury at that time of year, because it didn't have a good memory for us. Would we go back to the Sofitel at Christmas? No.
In hindsight, we had said to each other as we left the Sofitel, if we had spent 100,000 pesos on a really nice Airbnb where the whole family could stay with its own private swimming pool and whatever, even if we were just bringing in food every night, like, you know, having someone cook for us, we probably could have done it for a better and for less. But again, we didn't know, and we just wanted to go and experience something that was curated and in a hotel chain and was safe and felt nice after last year's horrible experience. So that's how we kind of justified the price that we spent. So not long after our time at Christmas, we started heading back down the country again. We put another 2,000 pesos in the car for gasoline, and we ended up staying in the Batangas area in a really cool Airbnb in a really cool area called Pico de Loro. It was our first kind of beachside experience since we'd left our island, so we were really excited to get good weather and to stay somewhere that is very much a holiday destination or a weekend getaway for people who live in Metro Manila. And we were really impressed with the beach. It was very beautiful, and it was in a private country club area, so you had to pay a fair amount of money to get into this place. And most of the accommodations in there, even if they were on Airbnb, were still kind of pricey, but it was a very nice getaway and a secret kind of location that not many people know about.
It was really nice. We all really enjoyed it. My dad again came with us, so again it was like a nice little weekend away with my dad and Lola Luz, and it was just a nice bonding weekend before we kind of said goodbye. We actually said our goodbyes there as well before they went back to Manila, and we went back down to start our journey back to the island here. So it was our kind of like final little trip with my dad for a while.
So we spent 2 nights in the Airbnb, and it cost us 16,250 pesos with all the fees just for the accommodation, and then we also had to pay 3,100 pesos in country club fees. Not cheap for 2 nights, but at the same time it was a lovely clean area that was very beautiful and did feel like you were on holiday. And it was probably the first time in a while that it felt like I was actually on holiday and not just in the city or in an apartment that was close to your dad so we could do New Year's or whatever. It was like actual holiday destination with restaurants and beaches that were clean and very nice, and a recommended area actually. If you've not been to Batangas, we recommend the Pico de Loro area because it was very beautiful.
It was, yeah, and it seemed to be quite unknown as well, and it was all set around this lovely lagoon that you could walk around, and there was so much in the actual country club, wasn't there? There was everything in there.
Gyms, play areas, water sports,
swimming pools,
badminton,
basketball, loads of stuff.
Lots of stuff to do with kids as well. Hello, here's a kid. come and show your face. Oh my goodness. The mystery child.
Yeah.
Did you like the swimming pool?
Yes, I did.
Yeah? Yeah, Story loves swimming, so we really enjoyed that, especially because we got good weather while we were there.
And if you're new to the channel, then this is one of our first videos that you may be finding. This is Story, our 6-year-old.
Yes.
Alright, go on then. Off you go. Look, you're getting Poppy all worked up now.
This is swimming. Unfortunately, that was probably the last nice part of the journey. The rest of the time we were travelling, the weather was terrible, so we stayed in a lot of the same places. We stayed in Naga City again, a place called Lucena City, which was again in the middle of nowhere on the Pan-Philippine Highway. It was very well set up, felt a bit more like a guest house experience, but a little bit pricey for the area. 4,500 pesos we paid to stay in this 1-bedroom apartment, which was kind of set up for road travel and not much else.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was right on the highway, so it was a little bit noisy, but I am glad that we found it because it was one of the nicer places that we did stay in, and they gave you breakfast in the morning. It was near a convenience store as well, so if you were stopping and you needed to get some food, you had that literally right next door. It was a good place to stop. It was clean.
Little kitchen, pet friendly, good air conditioning, can't really complain. We then just kept driving because the weather started to take a turn for the worse and there were flood warnings, so we ended up in a town called Matnog, which is right at the bottom of Luzon by the port. And that accommodation was very basic. They had no shower, it was cold water from the tap, they just had a bucket, but the beds were clean and large, the air conditioning worked well. And again, it was one of those places where if you were traveling with like 10 to 12 people, it would have been very, very, very cheap. But because we had a pet and it was the only place we could find, and the price came to only 2,100 pesos. So if you were to split that between 10 people, it's only 200 pesos each, so it would have been cheap. We then grabbed another boat back onto the island of Samar, which cost us 2,000 again. We drove for about 12 hours to clear the whole of Samar and the whole of Leyte in a day because of the flood warnings, and ended up back at the southern Leyte place, Hinyu Angan area, which we quite like now.
At the time that we were travelling, there were a lot of flood warnings and bad weather warnings and rainfall warnings coming up on our phone, so we wanted to just clear the island to minimise the risk of us getting stuck somewhere because of a flood or something like that.
If you come to the Philippines between December and March, you're probably going to experience some kind of bad weather, whether it's typhoon or heavy rainfall, monsoon, possible earthquakes, and they have a lot of flooding and stuff like that. So you really do have to choose your location because the Philippines is massive. We could be having stormy, typhoony weather here in Mindanao, but it might be beautifully and sunny up in Luzon. So choose your area wisely. We then grabbed a boat from Leyte back to Mindanao, which cost us 5,557 pesos. One of the nicer boat companies called Fast Cat. If anybody's deciding to travel by sea, we recommend that boat company. They're pretty good. And we stayed in one of our favourite accommodations in Surigao City, which is near to us, called Surigao Dream Beach Resort. Absolutely amazing location. Even if the weather's not good, we've had a nice time there. It's one of the best places to stay in Surigao City if you're in Mindanao. Maximum bonus points for it being pet friendly, but even if you don't travel with a pet, I would still say it is the best place to stay in that area. And in the summertime, when the weather is better and the sea is calmer, they actually do like whale shark watching adventures, and you can go see dolphins actually outside the room from your room.
We actually did see dolphins on our last morning there.
It was too far away to film them, but just sitting on your balcony looking out to sea, you can see dolphins.
Definite pod of dolphins. You could see the fins coming out of the water. It's really cool. First time that we've seen that for a long time. But they were too far away to actually capture them and show it, but they're there.
And then we grabbed one final boat back to the Siargao island, and that cost us 5,500 pesos. So, on to the total cost. How much does it cost to drive 3,000 kilometers from Mindanao to Luzon and back? How much did we spend on accommodation, on gasoline, and on travel or by boats? So,
drum roll. I can't do a drum roll.
I haven't actually worked it out yet. Let me calculate it. I just had to turn the light on because it's getting dark here. We've been filming this for a while and we've been calculating the costs, and the entire cost of the trip was 261,657 pesos, which is £3,875 British money.
Yeah.
So that's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be for a 6-week trip.
Yeah, when we heard it like that just now, we were both like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
A 6-week trip for a whole family, it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, including the doggy as well. I mean, I was expecting maybe 5,000, maybe 5,500. I mean, to be fair, we haven't included how much we spent on food. We didn't include any of our South Korea holiday. This is just the Philippines that we're talking about. So we probably did spend close to what we're thinking. But the Philippines part of the trip alone, those 6 weeks that we've been roaming about, and we could have done it for less had we followed our own tips that we now know.
Yes, which doesn't seem so bad considering the transport cost alone was less than what one flight would have been to Manila.
So this is gasoline and boats there and back. We calculated it to 26,277, which is just under 400 British pounds to drive all the way to Manila and drive all the way back.
Yeah.
Obviously not taking into account wear and tear on the car, but you know, you can't do everything.
You have to be a little bit crazy to want to do it because it takes a week over 2 hours, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you have a reason to, if you want to travel with a pet, for example, or you're transporting some goods, or you just want to go on a crazy journey, then that's how much you can do it for.
So obviously the accommodation cost was the most expensive thing. That on its own was 235,380, which is about £3,486. And we have no idea how much we spent on food and gifts and spending money because we just didn't track it. We were in vacation budget-free mode because we wanted to have a nicer time this Christmas. But I do hope you found this information useful. I'm pretty sure there's not many people out there that have done such a ridiculous journey. And if you are planning a trip to the Philippines, it will give you a kind of idea what you're going to be spending your money on. It's basically your accommodation is going to be the killer. If you can find ways to reduce your accommodation cost, you can eat out for very cheap, or you can eat out for very expensive if you want to treat yourself. There's so many options here in the Philippines. There's so many different types of accommodation you can stay on. We highly recommend using a website or an app like Airbnb just because it gives you the option to cook yourself at home, especially if you're a family and you don't want to eat out. So before we end the video, we just want to remind you, don't respond to that scammer in the comments, especially because this is a video about money. You know, a lot of those things can pop up, people offering you services and ways to invest. It's not anything to do with us. And if you do want to try protecting your interests and your money, try our Surfshark recommendation. There are links down below and the discount code is there too. And we will see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.